Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. Welcome back to another episode, and all kinds of things are happening in the NBA this week. Now, Cody, last night I had the incredible pleasure, after your description of the San Antonio Spurs as your favorite team of all time to watch, of going to the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles and watching the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama. And it was a little sad for me because Dylan Harper didn't play last night and Kawhi Leonard didn't play last night. But, you know, it's nice to be able to see an alien who makes... I was thinking about this. Basketball players themselves are aliens. They are mostly very tall people, which is very rare, right? It's very, very rare. You and I probably are usually the tallest people when we go places. And then when I hang out with basketball people, I'm just like, I'm the shortest person ever. This is apparently what it feels like for everyone else. And then they are like the cream of the crop athletically from those aliens. And then we have an alien in Victor Wembanyama on top of those aliens. So Bam Adebayo scored 83 points last week.
There's a lot of things for me to comment on. The first, we'll get to Bam in a second, because I think we have to respond to it in some way. It's like required. I haven't been to as many NBA games as one would think, especially living to as close to the Target Center as I do. But I've seen Rudy Gobert live. I've seen LeBron. I've seen Giannis. Giannis truly is like a wonder to see live. Like, it doesn't make sense to see him moving. Wembanyama, I can imagine, is like a different level. So from your perspective, someone that has seen quite a few games live and has been watching the NBA for a very long time, what was the experience like seeing him in person? Like, did it change the way you view him as a player at all? Do you have a different kind of appreciation after, seeing it in person?
I was able to see technically his first NBA appearance ever at Summer League and sit in like the fourth row. And what really jumped out then was how the players did not have an internal calibration of his length, because it just breaks everything that's ever happened in basketball history. And you can feel that. You can feel that when you're 10 feet away from someone and they go to take a step back three and they're like, what the hell? Wait, the guy was 11 feet away from me and he blocked it. And then, as many people have talked about over time, of course, sometimes he's blocking it with his fingertips. Sometimes he's catching balls with his wrists out of the air. The ones that I think really pop these days in person, as he's gotten a little bit older and as he's starting to come into his sort of athletic prime with the training that he's done in the offseason with the Shaolin monks and the adding weight, is when he's on a drive and he picks up the dribble and you're just like, oh, he's at the free throw line, but he's just going to like Statue of Liberty dunk it over everyone with one hand in a second, and it's coming. That's kind of the thing that pops probably the most in person.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other players. Is there anyone else that you can think of that when you saw live or you saw in person that physically you're like, this really doesn't make sense? Like, do you have a pantheon of these kinds of guys that you've seen?
LeBron's straight line speed would be one. I think really hard to see on TV, but Steph Curry's balance and movement patterns and the way he kind of hovers around the court over his center of gravity stands out. It's freakish. You're just like, why are you always on balance? What's happening? I'm trying to think of older players from back in the day when I went to games more. I mean, I had the same experience with Kobe as with Michael Jordan, when you get to sit relatively close and watch them and you just realize how high they jump on every jump shot they take. Which, you kind of know from watching them play, but when you see it in person, you're like, wow, how do you do that like 35 times a game? And it takes a tremendous amount of strength. So yeah, those are some that immediately come to mind. Do you have one besides Drew Holiday?
No, I've never actually seen, have I seen Drew Holiday live? I don't think I've ever seen Drew Holiday live.
Wow.
I'm trying to think, because I don't think I saw a lot of games post-pandemic, right? Like that kind of hit. Drew Holiday's traded there. They go on the championship run, so I didn't see any of that. I did see the Bucks the prior season, right, when they lost to the Raptors. I guess that was 2019, right? Because obviously I didn't go to the bubble and watch them. But in 2019, I saw them playing. I think it was game 1 against the Raptors. But I did see LeBron in that 2013 Miami Heat season. And I know that was against Milwaukee at the time, and he at least had one dunk where I'm just like, that was effortless. Like, your head's just at the rim, and you're enormous, and I don't know how it's physically possible to do that kind of thing.
Oh, I think I've told this story maybe last summer in our top 25 peaks of the 21st century series, but I sat behind the basket at a Dwight Howard peak athletic game, and he's just every 20 seconds, you just see him smiling as his face is in the rim when he dunks, and you're like, oh God, you can get up really, really high. This is freaky. I think this might have also been before he did the stunt at the dunk contest at All-Star Weekend. So it was kind of like jarring to realize his face is up at the basket. And then back when I was young, seeing Wilt touch the top of the backboard, that was also really fun.
Wait, that's a real thing you saw?
What are you talking about, Cody? How old do you think I am? What are you talking about?
I'm just saying you can't do this to me. Like maybe Wilt showed up and he was still able to do it in a time frame that you would have seen him.
I'm just segueing Wilt because Wilt Chamberlain once scored 100 points in a game, and then naturally, as you would expect, the NBA's 35th leading scorer this year, Bam Adebayo, scored 83 points in a game, and it was one of the craziest, weirdest, most ridiculous basketball games of all time, and it has all kinds of hot take reactions in different directions. And I just did want to quickly apply some historical context to the game. The 100-point Wilt game, the Warriors, that's Wilt's team, fouled intentionally in the fourth quarter to get the ball back so they could feed Wilt to score more points, which is exactly what the Heat did with Bam. Both of these games are gimmicky. And in fact, if you look at most of the top scoring games in NBA history, like half of them are gimmicky like this. David Robinson scoring 71 points on the last day of the season to try to win a scoring title. David Thompson, I think, had 73. George Gervin had a 60 piece at the end of the season. All these scoring title type things. So a lot of these outlying scoring games are very gimmicky. This was related to the YouTube video we talked about, where there's a balance where the defense will ratchet up its attention. And at no point in the evening until the late fourth quarter did the Washington Wizards even remember they were playing a basketball game and attempt to play defense, which is why Bam had an all-time record 43 free throws. It wasn't Bam's fault for going for it. It wasn't Eric Spoelstra's fault for going for it. Eric Spoelstra apparently is a total basketball nihilist and correctly said, I can do whatever I want on the court. I can intentionally foul all the time if I want. But the reason why the man had 43 free throws is because the Wizards played absolutely zero defense all night, particularly against Bam. They've struggled against centers. They've struggled against athletic centers. He drove the ball down their throat. And I literally don't remember watching a foul and going, that was not a correct call. They just didn't play defense, and they just hacked him over and over and over. And then Cody, in the final 2 minutes, they started double and triple teaming him when he was at like 75 points. And that was a crazy basketball game.
So I think my first reaction, based on listening to other podcasts and the way that people were talking about it, I'm really glad that I'm just not on social media, because I think the discourse would have made me just leave for a little bit. And I was able to hear it filtered through some of these other podcasters, and apparently people were in quite the uproar about it. Like, people have some really, really strong opinions about it. So I guess if that's the case, here's some opinions that I have. Let's say you're like in high school and you're playing against a really not good team. Like, we're talking about, like, okay, come on, they're like a state,
like the Washington
contender.
Wizards.
Yeah. Yes. But in a high school game, like, if you're up by a ton and you have one guy that's just picking on him and you're about to break the school record or whatever else, maybe go to the bench. Like, it's okay. It's not that serious. But if you're a professional athlete and you're in a professional league with other professional players and you're playing a professional basketball game where people are there, stop him. And if you think it's so easy to get 83 and anyone else could do it against the Wizards, then do it, right? Then go ahead and do it yourself. So those are my takes. It's sick. I'm really happy that Bam did that, because that's a really cool. And I'm glad that every time we put that list up, Bam is going to be above Kobe Bryant, because that is hilarious. So that's my take. Good for him. If you're mad, do it yourself.
It's a good troll. It's a good troll, because to me, it only reinforces how the context of these great games is so important. You know, if you ask me, Cody, what's the greatest scoring game or what are the greatest performances I've ever seen, I don't think any of them are going to be on that list that they always put up. Like Kobe's 81 against Toronto was really good, but the 62 against Dallas a couple weeks before was way better. It was, first of all, his scoring rate was much higher. He scored a much higher percentage of his team's points in that game, and Dallas was like a championship level team that he outscored them by himself. And then the last thing is, if you go watch the game, you go watch how they scored. Toronto has some highlights. That classic 81-point game against Toronto, it has some highlights, but there's a lot of free throws. There's a lot of just like, are we going to send a double? We're going to send a single. We don't know what's going on. He gets hot for a little bit. Personally, I like games where the guy is really, really hot, really, really dialed in, gets to his spots, and then has a ton of counters. And I feel like regular season games are almost even hard to get to that place. More often than not, my mind personally goes to Klay Thompson and his 37-point quarter, Kevin Love 34-point first quarter. Those are the places my mind goes in the regular season, because I think the true great scoring performances almost by definition have to be reserved for the playoffs when you're playing better teams, much better defenses, and they are just loading up on you as much as possible. And that's why, to me, historically, like 45, 50-point games in the playoffs are Herculean. Whereas in the regular season, sometimes you're just like, hey, did you guys see Embiid had 70 points in 29 minutes or whatever it was? It's a totally different thing.
So I don't want to go out on a limb and say this is the best scoring game ever. It just might be one of my favorite aesthetically like to watch games ever is Michael Jordan's 55 piece against the Phoenix Suns. I think it's game 4 in the 93 finals.
93, yeah.
Because what's so different about that is we're in the finals, right? So it's the pinnacles, the two best teams that make it as far as they can into the playoffs. And the thing about that game is the Suns are just helpless. Like they're just throwing everything they can at him. And he is just bulleting his way to the rim. Like he's got everything going. He's got the palm like finger roll. He's got the spectacular and one over Barkley where he pumps his fists into the air and runs away. He's got the fadeaway. He's got the pull up mid range. Like it's just one of those where the other team is literally like we are on the precipice of winning a championship and we cannot do anything about what this guy does. And there's something about that feels particularly special. Again, I'm not even saying that that's the best one ever, but just when I feel like, man, I want to see a little bit of 90s ball, that's usually the game I just throw on for funsies.
Okay, speaking of basketball nihilism, Kawhi Leonard sprained his ankle. He wasn't at this game last night. I was really disappointed because he's playing incredibly, and we're going to talk about it in a second. We've put it off too long. We're going to get into my Clippers propaganda in a second. But Kawhi Leonard is very close now. He has like 2 more games before he crosses over this ridiculous 65-game barrier. You know, Nikola Jokic is close to this barrier. Victor Wembanyama is close to this barrier. And then even players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, et cetera, if they have an ankle and they're out for a week or two, they have not yet hit 65 games. They're not safe. And we only have, what, Cody, like 14 games left in the season, or usually 15, 13 games for a lot of these teams. So we're like one minor injury away for a bunch of players of not being able to qualify for any of these postseason awards. At this point in time, my question to you is, are you rooting for every star to play 65 games or more and everyone's on the table? Or are you rooting for all the stars to miss and be under, and we can have a first team all NBA of who would that be? It would be Jalen Duren, and who else can we get on the first team all NBA? I'm blanking on who the second tier of players would be, but it'll just be, can we get Derek White on an all NBA team? This would be absolutely amazing.
Well, I don't know if you saw the news, but Anthony Edwards just went down with a knee injury and he'll be reevaluated in a week or two.
Whoa.
Right? So we're even talking about somebody like he's at 58 games right now, right?
Whoa.
So there's like a chance that Anthony Edwards enters this list as well. So you're talking about the tier of guys that would bump themselves up into that first tier. That's another guy right there.
So he's 2 weeks. This is how crazy this is. He's 2 weeks away, basically, because if he's played 58 games and the Timberwolves have played 68 games, he can miss 7 more games. Mm-hmm. That's it. Once he gets to that 8th game missed, it's mathematically impossible for him to hit 65. So I noticed you're dodging my question. But yes, which one are you leaning toward these days? Are you just looking for total anarchy and chaos, or would you like this season to actually have everyone above 65 games, and then it hopefully just becomes this weird footnote where like technically players could have missed it, but they didn't because everyone played over 65 games?
I do think that the awards and who makes the all NBA teams and all of that stuff, they're really important, especially for people that start scouring like Basketball Reference 30 years after the fact. But we've talked about this before. I think the rule's kind of silly. Like I do, I would like for the rule to be gone. And I think the only way we can get rid of it is if all this happens. So it's not necessarily I'm not like pro NBA anarchism all the time, but I feel like that this is the true and best path to get rid of this rule. So I would love to have this season that we can have a footnote that's like, yep, this is when the NBA went back to the drawing board and reevaluated this silly rule. So I'm definitely leaning on the side of just everyone miss it. I don't want anyone to have a catastrophic injury. Everyone has to be back for the playoffs. I want everyone to be healthy and whatever else. But let's all miss that just to see what happens. Do you feel the same way, or are you against me on this?
I thought you were going to go in the other direction, and I kind of am also rooting for just the most likely thing that obliterates this idea and punts it into the sun, because I do think there is some chance, based on everyone I've heard saying, why do we have this rule? This is ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. It's an own goal. You're putting handcuffs on yourself for no reason. No one asked you to do it. So yes, I would like to see this rule go away immediately. And it seems like the most likely path would be for everyone to, like, 64 games would be the most amazing poetic justice if we had first team all NBA and MVP playing 66 games and then nope, no awards for you, 64 games. That would absolutely be the chef's kiss of this entire thing. So I guess in reality, if I knew the future, I would want everyone to, I don't want anyone to even roll an ankle. It's soft tissue damage. It's not fun. But if we could have a guarantee that this thing would go away, I hope no one misses any more games. But otherwise, man, it would be nice if somebody, got a bad cough for an afternoon or something or missed a team flight and couldn't quite make it to game number 65. That would just be wild.
So in the comments, someone asked, and I guess we should clarify this for anyone that doesn't know, what was the intended purpose of the 65 game rule? It was to curb, like, I can't even think of what the term was. It was
tanking.
No, it wasn't necessarily
load management.
Load management. Thank you. Because the idea is that a bunch of these players were just sitting out a bunch of games, being prepared for the playoffs, and this would incentivize them to actually play the majority of games, right? And so that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. Like, I don't know if there's really been any change in how much these guys play. Like, people are going to get injured. This is a sport that is extremely difficult on people's joints and muscles and everything else that's part of the skeletal structure. And these people are enormous, and they are more prone to those kinds of injuries. So I think that's just the fact of the matter. I don't know if they're going to try and do anything about load management. I don't know if they're ever going to face the music and realize that the only way to do it is to actually reduce the number of games that NBA season has. But I think they're going to do everything they can to avoid that truth. So I don't know where this ends up.
I'm actually rooting for a slightly different outcome, Cody.
Okay.
I would like to see multiple players get down to 65 games. And then when it looks like they're about to miss a game, I would like to see them play either the first possession of the game or the last possession of the game, and then immediately check out of the game. That's what I would like to see, no matter what their injury is. I think that would be the poetic justice for this entire thing, that we could call it a wrap, right? We could start playing the music, playing it off stage. That's the last we see of the 65 game cutoff. We have to be close to that, right? Someone has to have thought of that.
Isn't that what AC Green did to right? AC Green, the holder of the most NBA games played consecutively. I think he broke 1,000 games. I thought he did that a few games. I even think Mikal Bridges, who is
Mikal did.
Off the top of my head, the current Iron Man, like, I think he did that where he checked in and checked out in the first couple of minutes.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think he was injured, right? It was just that he was going to take the night off or something.
I think so.
He wanted to keep the streak going. But yeah, we have to be close to that. The NBA teams, if they're known for one thing, it's brilliant shenanigans. So the Los Angeles Clippers, Kawhi Leonard.
Well, to help with the transition here, Kawhi Leonard, who will not be on any of these lists, will not be an MVP voter, and will not be on an all-NBA team. So I think that's important to preface this conversation.
Why are you saying that? Why are you saying he will not be on any of these things?
Isn't he's at 53 games right now? He's got a sprained ankle. He's not making 65 games.
He's got 2 more. I believe he has 2 more games. If he comes back this week, he can still play 12 more games. He's played 53. The Clippers are at 68. So he's got 2 more to miss.
Maybe it's just my gut speaking right now, but I just don't see it happening.
Oh, wow. You don't think he can get there? Okay.
I don't.
Well,
he strikes me as someone, he might intentionally sit out the last game to do it. Like, it just strikes me as a Kawhi thing to do. Or he wouldn't even know. He's like, I'm going to sit the last game. They'd be like, Kawhi, you'll be out of voting for everything, and be like, oh, and then he'll still set it out. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of thing happened.
If he played most of the rest of the season and had 65 or 66 games under his belt, do you think he would make all-NBA first team?
I guess it depends on how many other people are missing.
Just assume everyone else is healthy. Yeah, let's assume everyone else is healthy and everyone makes it.
Okay. It also depends on where the Clippers end up, because they're the 8th seed. So I think people would punish him for what happened at the beginning of the season, right?
That's the thing. They can't really move, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard for them to catch Phoenix. They could drop down if they struggle, and if the teams behind them, like the Warriors, win a bunch of games. It's like a game or 2 difference right now with 14 left. But they can't really move up that much.
I really don't know what would happen. I would need to see who's going to miss all NBA first team before I would predict it.
So let's say everyone's healthy, and then
Yep.
I assume we're talking about Jokic as a lock, SGA as a lock, Wembanyama as a lock. Luka Doncic is probably a lock with the voters, so that's 4.
Okay.
So there's then you have this next spot, don't you think? You have this next spot where it could be Cade Cunningham, it could be Jaylen Brown,
Yep.
it could be Kawhi Leonard. Only one of those can be
Could
the 5th
be
spot.
Donovan Mitchell, could be Jalen Brunson. Like, I think those are the names.
Wow, you think Brunson or Mitchell could make first team?
I think they could. Yeah,
Wow.
I certainly do think that they could. I don't know what people's opinion are of Kawhi. It does seem like people are really excited about him, but at that point, he's competing for that last spot. And if that's actually the case, I would say he's a pretty decent chance of making it, but I wouldn't like put any kind of money down on it.
I guess I just haven't. I've heard some people on some broadcast throw around he's been one of the best players or one of the 5 best players in the league since the New Year, the calendar turned over after New Year's. You hear this kind of talk sometimes when you tune into games, but broadcasters will casually say these things in passing about a lot of players. It's the old joke about, having more than, what is it? Charles Barkley has 15 people in his fave 5 or whatever. It's just like, Austin Reeves, he's been one of the best basketball players in the league for the last 2 months. And Austin Reeves has been great, but there's a difference between throwing some praise at someone who's playing at a really high level and legitimately being one of the 3 or 5 best players in the league. So, I mean, do you think fans realize how good, do you realize, Cody, how good Kawhi has been in the last couple months? Have you checked in on any of the Clippers or his stats or whatever is going on there?
So there's a couple ways to talk about this, and I'm going to start with some numbers, right? So we're going to work in towards the numbers. In 2017, let's backtrack to I think we decided over the summer that that's probably his peak season, right? That's the best Kawhi Leonard was. And if you look at the minutes, it's like, almost 600 minutes that he played on the Spurs without LaMarcus Aldridge on the court. Okay. And during those minutes, he scored just shy of 34 points per 75, an insane +9 true shooting, right? An insane +9 true shooting percentage. Okay. So 34-ish +9, right? Kawhi Leonard right now, nearly a decade later, right? As a guy that we would all probably agree is past his prime, right? Without Harden this season, he's played just shy of 1,000 minutes. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's a good sample.
In those minutes, averaging 35 points per 75 on just shy of +5 true shooting percentage, +5 relative true shooting percentage. So he's scoring at a higher clip than he did in 2017 as the Lone Star. And yeah, is his efficiency down from what he was at his peak? It certainly is. But +5 is nothing to sneeze at. Right.
No,
and
right.
so when I was looking at those numbers, I'm like, oh my God, like this might actually be the most voluminous we've seen Kawhi Leonard as a scorer at any point in his career. And then I started watching the games, and Ben, you've been trying to get me to watch a lot more Clippers and a lot more Kawhi. And let me tell you, I did not walk away unimpressed. He has been absolutely spectacular this season.
Okay, so we're on the same page. This is the first time we've actually gotten to talk about this, and I've been prompting Cody to watch the Clippers and Kawhi for a while. And I don't think anyone's going to argue that this version of Kawhi is his peak defensive performance. He still has the length and the hands and the size and the physicality and the switchiness that have value in today's game, but off ball, can be a struggle, and he doesn't have the same motor or sort of agility or quickness necessarily, but the economy of motion on offense and the efficiency with which he makes his moves and decisions, it truly is aimbot activated. And to be that good offensively, the thing is, if 2017 was the year we chose as Kawhi's overall peak, I think his offensive peak after that, you could probably make the case it was 2020, where he added a little playmaking, had everything working. Stuff looked really good for the Clippers. They take the break, they go into the bubble, the wheels fall off. But that regular season was probably the most well-rounded overall offense. This Kawhi still has most of that passing. He still has the shooting. He has the efficiency. He has the mid-range. The numbers are ridiculous. The advanced numbers, I mean, the Clippers have been really good with him on the court. They haven't been very good with him off the court. That was felt last night at the game I was at, where they just didn't have enough offensive firepower to contend with the Spurs, especially when Wembanyama was roaming the paint out there. But when he's in those games, I mean, heck, just the last time they played the Spurs, Wemby said it was the hardest game of his life, and they had a 20-point lead, and San Antonio had to come back. That was a great game. So, yeah, just at a surface, superficial level, based on the numbers that you just threw out there, that's a great place to start because he's been absolutely ridiculous this season on offense. And I don't know how we handled the very beginning of the year and, before Chris Paul was sent home and all that stuff, but they have been very good for the last 2 to 3 months. This is not a blip. And Kawhi looks, it's not a joke. It's not hyperbole to say that he looks like one of the best players in the league. He's been ridiculous offensively.
So I think when I dived into the numbers a little bit more, the thing that really shocked me more than anything is, again, going back to 2017, no Aldridge Kawhi, shot 65% at the rim. This season, without Harden on the court, he's shooting 75% at the rim. And there's actually not a huge dip in his rim field goal attempts, right? Like his rim frequency is actually in the same ballpark as 2017. And I think it stood out to me a couple of times. I'm thinking about the game that they recently played against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And he had a couple of baskets. It's one of those that I had to go back and rewatch these shots just a couple of times because it's so spectacular and slow, and his timing and strength are just beyond what you can just catch right away. And he gets Rudy Gobert on a couple of switches. And usually, you get somebody like Rudy Gobert as a big rim protector. You want a speedy guard who's going to be able to blow by him and get to the rim. That's not Kawhi Leonard's game. Like, no one's saying that Kawhi is just going to blur right by you. But both of those baskets, he was just able to just get his shoulder around Gobert, and Gobert's right next to him. He's touching him, right? And he is just timing out exactly when he's going to go up, and he just kind of makes these really basic layups, and he has a couple of them in that game. And I'm like, his timing and the way that he can use his strength to just kind of subtly bounce off a guy with throwing the elbow is maybe, I don't want to say the best in the NBA, but there's very few guys that I can think about that do both of those things well. He just doesn't have the straight line athleticism to beat people, but he has the Luka Doncic kind of thing where if he gets his hip on your side, or he gets his shoulder on your side, he has all of the tricks. His hand is such, he's got the Michael Jordan thing where he can finish in so many different ways because he can't knock it away from the mitts that he has, right? The claw also just holds it for himself. And so to me, I think that's the thing that stood out to me is the rim finishing on the drives is just so Terminator-esque, not to go back to the cliche about Kawhi, but it's really kind of subtle and fantastic to watch.
Well, then there's also the mid-range where we've talked about everything Jaylen Brown has done this year, but Kawhi pretty much has the best mid-range numbers on earth this season. I mean, he's taking 11 mid-range shots every 75 possessions at 51%. And again, the economy of these actions is just, this is something that, again, when the Clippers don't have him on the floor, the offense struggles. And when he's on the floor, they're in the 92nd percentile in offensive rating when he's on the floor. The team is 13 points better per 100 when he's in the game versus out of the game this year. So this is just sort of one of these tour de force seasons, it feels like, with the mid-range, with the strength, with his passing has been, as I said, arguably where it's at his peak, and it's just an incredible performance. Now, you mentioned those numbers without James Harden or since the trade or things like that. One interesting thing to me about those numbers is that his 3-point percentage is way down without Harden, and I'm not even sure what to make of that in the sense of okay, his 3-point numbers are down without James Harden, but is that just a sample thing? Because when I watch him, he still feels like aimbot from all over the court whenever he wants to get into his shots. So it's been absolutely incredible. And the last thing to really hammer home here is he seems to be about as low turnover as ever. So we're talking about extremely, extremely economical offense where you're suppressing turnovers. Just an incredible offensive season for Kawhi while still being a decent defender, I think, at the other end of the court.
So for the 3-point percentage thing, I feel like that's maybe less of a Kawhi thing and more of a Harden thing, right? When I was seeing those numbers, because he actually, when I was looking at it, when Harden was on the court, he's shooting 10 percentage points better from 3-point range than he is when Harden is off the court. And I'm like, I feel like we've seen this throughout his careers. When Harden's on the court with other scorers, those scorers score at a more efficient pace. So I think it's just a feather on the cap of Harden as a playmaker, right? He draws attention. He's great at setting guys up, things like that. I want to go to the Knicks game quickly too, because there's a couple other plays, and I'm just like shouting out specific plays, but they're just sticking in my mind. And I was very excited to share them. There was one play he had against Karl Anthony Towns, who, you might scoff at. It's like, that's not a great rim protector. What a stupid example, Cody. But Towns is a strong dude. Like, he's big. Like, Kawhi gets downhill against him at one point. And he kind of does the thing where on the first step, he does like the rip through move kind of on the first step. And he gets like a lot of contact. Like, Towns hits him straight down. And on the second step, he changes it to palming it and just like hangs in the air for a second and finishes it. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is a 7-foot center that he just blasted through by taking the contact. And he's like, oh, I'm just going to switch to my one-handed finish it. Right. So I saw that. I'm like, that is just spectacular strength. There's another play. He gets Mikal Bridges.
On that first play, was there a foul called on that first play?
That was an and one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He's just so strong. It's and it's to your point about finishing around the rim. It doesn't have to be with speed. It's just like he's really big, right? Yeah. He's really big and broad, and the strength is incredible. So yes, the Knicks game continue. And
then the other play that stood out to me is he has Bridges on a post up at one point. He straight up Olajuwon'd him. Right? Like, he has a play where he just kind of like post spins on him. And I think he goes to his left hand and finishes with like an extension finger roll off the post. So we're talking about a guy that, like you talked about, dialed in from everywhere. Like, if you give him any amount of space anywhere on the court, especially the mid range, it's just going in. Strength. If he gets downhill a little bit, and again, he doesn't need to be super fast, so just a little bit of a runway, he's going to plow right through you. And then if you do wall him off, he has the nice little bag of tricks in the post where he can kind of shimmy around and get to a bunch of different shots. So his offensive game is just about as polished as you can get in terms of solvability. So I see everything that he's doing. And I'm like, man, the Clippers can keep this up. Like, Kawhi's not going to be slowed down like in the playoffs. Like, he just has the inelastic offensive game that's just like, all right, he's just going to keep chugging along and everyone else has to do their job and he has to stay healthy.
I think this is actually an insane story, which is why I prefaced it with I don't really know how much it's been sort of absorbed by the basketball fandom and basketball sphere right now, because he's almost 35 years old. He's like 34. He's closer to 35 than 34. And for him to do this after all the injuries he's had, after all the season, like, this is in a way the definition of a comeback player. This is in a way like, how is this happening? And he's been very good at times on and off when he's been healthy in the last couple of years, but it's just been in blips and blurbs, and he's younger. And every time he gets injured again, you're just like, well, now it's another injury on top of your previous injury history, and your body's getting older, so it's harder to come back. And yet here he is, maybe putting together his best offensive season in the NBA at 34 after all this mileage and wear and tear on his body. And I just think it's one of the most incredible stories of the entire season. That's one. Two is, given everything we've talked about and given what you just said, how many players right now do you think clearly are better than Kawhi Leonard on offense?
Oh, just on offense?
Yes, let's leave the defense part aside for a second, or for later.
Okay. Wow. Just on offense.
Nikola Jokic.
Jokic.
Yeah.
Shea. You got Shea.
Shea. Yeah.
Luka, I would say.
Clearly.
Yep.
You're going clearly.
No, do you disagree with me saying
I just that's where it's Jokic and Shea I'm comfortable with, and then I think it starts to get really interesting.
It does, but if we're basing it just on, say, the last 12 games or so of the Lakers, like, Luka's starting to really Luka himself up a little bit, right? So I think that makes it a little bit more interesting. I think right now I might lean Luka on this.
Okay,
side.
yes, but then is there anyone else?
So then we get into is Kawhi Leonard a better offensive player than Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, Jalen Brunson?
Yes. Brunson's interesting, yeah.
Is in that class? That's an interesting question, because he doesn't have all of those guys. I think are going to operate the pick and roll like at a higher volume and a little bit more efficiently as a passer than he is, right? I think guys like Donovan Mitchell can get into the paint differently than he does, right? It's because of the speed and the footwork and things like that. I don't know if that actually makes a difference. So I think he's at least in that ballpark, but from what I've seen lately, like, you got to really respect the scoring game. So he's at least in that ballpark.
At least in the ballpark of, there's like 3 offensive players in the world that are better than him kind of thing right now. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Yeah, it's I just think it's absolutely crazy. So
with that said, though, like we're talking about a team, right? Like the Clippers right now, like you said, they're basically locked into the 8 seed. Kawhi is maybe having his best offensive season. They're really clicking. We talked about James Harden, but they have their new teammate, Darius Garland. He's doing some stuff out there. The rest of the roster, I don't know. What do you think about the Clippers right now? Are you getting a little antsy about seeing them in the playoffs?
Yeah, but actually you're connecting to something that you just said. These 2 points I want to put together. So Kawhi and the rest of the team, I mean, especially after the Harden trade or before Garland came back and started playing because he was injured, not a ton of offensive firepower. Where would you expect to see him if we brought up like pick and roll leaders in the NBA in terms of efficiency of those actions? Where would you expect to see his pick and roll actions?
You're talking about Kawhi.
Yes, Kawhi. Yeah, as the ball handler when he's running that pick and roll action, because you explicitly called that out a second ago, didn't you?
Okay, I did explicitly call that out, but I think a big part of it, I'm assuming it's quite efficient because if we rope in both the passing and the scoring, I'm guessing he scores quite well and he doesn't turn the ball over. So I think those two things are going to help him a lot. Yep. But I think the main thing, without looking at the numbers, I'm assuming the volume is just lower than somebody like Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, he doesn't have the super. I mean, Luka will run like nearly 50 pick and rolls every 100 possessions, according to the tracking data. You know what I mean? It's a very large number. Whereas with someone like Kawhi, the number is more like 25. I think it's technically 27 or something like that. So Brunson and Luka are going to be in this super high category where they just go to this play over and over again. One of the things I think is really interesting about Kawhi as an offensive weapon, and the reason why I don't know if we should just gift someone like Luka the third, clearly like there's no case to be made for Leonard there, is he is efficient in his pick and roll actions, but he's efficient in isolation. He's efficient off ball. He's efficient off screens. The Clippers run different sets for him. He goes to the post when he needs to. They run actions where they try to get him cross screens and get him freed up in the post. So yes, the volume is lower there, but the volume's lower there because he doesn't necessarily spam that play over and over again.
Mm-hmm. The thing with Luka, though, for the separator in this case, in my mind, is Luka is a genius level passer, and Kawhi is he's a good passer, right? He's a good passer, but Luka's like on a completely different level, and I think that unlocks some other stuff from his teammates. Where I never really watched Kawhi play, and I'm like, wow, he is significantly making his teammates' lives a lot easier with their shots. It makes their lives easier because he makes a lot of efficient shots and he makes the right pass, but he's not like, I'm double teamed and I'm going to somehow find Duran, not Duran. I'm just going to find Ayton hanging out at the rim for an alley-oop in this possession.
Yeah. If we look at, if we eliminate sort of the low volume pick and roll players around the league, we just do enough just to get Nikola Jokic in there. He runs about 10 every 100 possessions. We do it just enough. Steph Curry is first.
Oh, we didn't say Steph Curry.
We've talked about this before. Steph Curry is first. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is second. His passing has been fantastic this year. This is just going to be so interesting to see Shai in the playoffs, and the extra counters he has for defenses is going to be fantastic. Nikola Jokic is third, the aforementioned Jokic to get that cutoff in. Luka Doncic is fourth, and Kawhi Leonard is seventh.
Wow.
So just want to kind of put that in perspective, that he's playing at an extremely, extremely high level. And it's not one of these things where it's just individual numbers. It really, truly is affecting the team. Now that team, the Clippers, had this weird 6-21 start to the year. And since then they have climbed back over 500. They're at 500 right now as of recording this. And I have to say, I am very impressed with the Clippers when they have Ben Mathurin coming off the bench. They unfortunately lost Niederhauser, who was just absolutely fantastic. I was ready to pick him to win the title before that injury. And Brook Lopez is playing better. Brook Lopez is playing in different coverages. They have him coming out to the level of the screen or hedging or trapping. And then sometimes he's in drop. And then sometimes they've got zone concepts. And I just think they're playing really well on both ends of the court. So they have a pretty good defense and they have a very good offense. And I think in their last like half of the season, if you just said, give me like the last 41 or 42 games or something, they're like 28-14 with a +7 net rating. So I think the Clippers, to me, are one of the better teams in the West. After the juggernauts, I would put the Clippers right there.
First of all, I feel lied to and cheated seeing Brook Lopez playing in a bunch of different defensive coverages. Yeah. I was told for years that it was drop only. And that's it. You got Bobby Portis has to come off the bench to do some switches, right? Giannis has to go to center to do some switches. Nope. Brooke Lopez is all of a sudden trapping and all of this other kind of nonsense.
You were hoodwinked.
This is nonsense. This is ridiculous. I don't know who to blame, but I'm angry about this.
I have a quick correct. The stats department is in my ear. The Clippers net rating is +5, 28 and 14 in this stretch, and +5 in the last 90 days. Keep going. You were talking about your emotional betrayal from watching Brooke Lopez play different coverages.
I'm not talking about it anymore. He's a fantastic rim protector. He got the Milwaukee Bucks the title, so good for him. How have you felt about, still sub 30 minutes per game? He's not playing big minutes. How have you felt about the Darius Garland experience in LA?
Darius Garland, to me, is a player who really needs to have his flow and his confidence going. And I think that's been a challenge for him with all the injuries in the last few years. I have been very optimistic about what I've seen because there have been moments where DG is starting to get loose, if you know what I mean. He's starting to hop around on one foot. He's making some threes. He's throwing some passes. But like you could see it in the game last night. They were a little frustrated. A few things didn't go the right way. It's hard to get shots. And then, he's got a great idea for an alley-oop on the fast break, looks over into the stands, give it a little no look, throws it into the stands. It's like we can't have an alley-oop if it's 12 feet over the backboard. We can't do that. So I like the direction. I like the what I've seen, but it hasn't fully come to fruition yet. And it could. And I think it's really interesting to think about. They've had a lot of successful minutes with Garland and what that looks like with Garland, with Kawhi, with everyone else healthy, Lopez, Chris Dunn, Ben Mathurin off the bench. They're an interesting team that I think is just good enough defensively right now and just potent enough offensively in a particular matchup to be deadly. Unfortunately, it looks like they're stuck either playing the Spurs or the Thunder. Yeah. So we're probably not really going to get to see the chaos that they could unleash because I think you could make the argument they're better than any of the other teams in the West. It's just we're never going to get to see it, right? They're not going to be part of that fun round robin between Houston and Denver and the Lakers and, whoever else is Minnesota, whoever else is trying to figure out, like, on Sunday, we could be the NBA champs. On Monday, we might not make the playoffs. That's what every one of those teams looks like. So Denver's struggling, and as we said recently, people got mad at me. They were like, Houston's in the 3rd seed. I'm like, but they keep not looking good. And yeah, it's a weird West right now.
The Thunder aren't infallible, though, and the Spurs are definitely unproven, right? Like, the Thunder went to 2 7-game series in the playoffs last year, and, J-Dub was playing. We knew we had an injured wrist after the fact, but he's still not playing. So, I wouldn't – I'm not saying the Clippers are going to upset them, but, it's not out of the realm of possibility that you have – like, this is how you get a dark horse upset is you get a team like the Clippers who come out of nowhere in the second half. So, I think that's a possibility, right?
Well, okay, yeah, but – I buy that. I buy that. You might need some injuries in that particular matchup or something like that. But let's look at the Lakers. Okay. They have had this change defensively. Now, Cody, if you go back to the beginning of the year, didn't we have a running bet, a gentleman's bet for our usual $1 of whether the Lakers would be a top 20 defense? Wasn't that it?
That was my proclamation.
Yes.
That the Lakers would not be top 20 in defense.
Yes, and they are literally 20th in defense right now. Are you aware of this?
I did not know that, actually.
Yes. Now the thing is, the team ahead of them is the Clippers, but the Clippers are trending upward in the last few months defensively. The Clippers are not playing like a defensive juggernaut, so it's not impossible for the Lakers to pass them, but it's like the team that's ahead of them that they need to catch is also playing better defensively. So, and then the team behind them is way behind them. So it's like, are the Lakers stuck in the 20 spot? Is this what's going to happen to Cody's great proclamation that they're going to land right on the 20 line? This has all happened since Marcus Smart really went into the starting lineup. Yes, you're going to, I'll let you cook. This has really been an interesting thing that's got people curious about whether the Lakers have some serious potential here to win a series or two in the West.
First of all, I think if I'm counting correctly, I just updated the thingybasketball.net charts here. I think the Lakers are either 18th or 19th. I never know. You know how the thing where, like, you don't know if it counts as like the 30th spot, but either way, I think they're top 20 in defense right now. Like, they've crossed the threshold. Like, if the bet ended right now, I would be a loser.
No, really?
I believe so, because I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, we don't
6,
have to.
7,
We don't
8,
have to count to
9.
20 on the radio. I'll
I was gonna,
double check it.
I was going to count to 11. I think I count 11 teams. I guess they're tied with the Clippers, but there's 10 teams behind them.
I have them as 20. I have them as 20th.
All right. Well,
yeah.
Numbers barely exist anymore. We can just say whatever we
Cody
want.
Trying to count. Cody trying to count to 20 so he could lose his own bet. It's amazing.
I'm just so used to my 2-year-old daughter who just counts like 1, 3, 8, 9, 4. Like, yep, nailed it. But the thing what I was going to say, I pulled it up. I don't know if you've had this experience this year, but I'm watching the Lakers. Marcus Smart, he's always fun to watch. I've enjoyed the Marcus Smart experience. And I'm like, wow, is it possible for 38-year-old Marcus Smart to really dial it in for a playoff run? Dead serious. And then
Marcus
I pulled
Smart
up his
not 38.
So I pulled up his basketball reference and I'm like, this man's 31.
Yeah.
He's 31. I think Drew Holiday was 31 on the Bucks championship run. Like, you can still be a defensive menace at that point. And then it started. I had that hint, Ben. I had that moment where I'm like, maybe this Marcus Smart stuff is maybe this is real, because the hands are still there. The awareness and communication is still there. The dog where he's just I mean, LeBron's the one that's diving all over the place. I mean, that was quite the Superman dive that he had, I think, in his first game back. But I think Marcus Smart being inserted as that mainstay in the starting lineup is kind of exactly what the Lakers need as an injection of physicality and defensive power out there.
Marcus Smart actually just turned 32 this week.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He, Drew, by the way, was, I think, 30, just shy of 31 in the championship. Although that was played in like the summer, wasn't it? So he might have been very close to 31 because the season was shifted because of COVID. So, yeah, the thing is, with Smart in the lineup, since it's December 30th. Since December 30th, when he went in the lineup, they have a +8 net rating with him on the court, 112 defensive rating. Again, not a juggernaut, but trying to get to what we talked about at the beginning of the year, where can you be a passable defense? Can you be an average-ish or slightly above average-ish defense? And he seems to have been the ingredient to kind of help this team get over the hump and be passable and respectable. I thought in the most recent game, I kind of deep dive with them against the Nuggets over the weekend. That game didn't that game go into overtime and then Luka hit a game winner? Is that
yeah.
Is
that the one where Reeves? No. Is that the one where Reeves missed the free throw intentionally and caught it and then they scored, or is that a different game?
See, it's all blurred together for me.
They've had some magical finishes lately. Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. Also, Austin Reeves is ridiculously good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what were we talking about? We're talking about Marcus Smart. The defense is really interesting because they're essentially just still switching everything. But I have seen better possessions from the kind of supporting players, if you will. I think JJ Redick has some confidence in Luke Kennard's acumen in terms of how to play things and where to be. Luka Doncic over the weekend, I thought, had a better defensive game than I've seen from him in a while, a little bit more activity. Now, there's still really interesting stuff where the Lakers kind of have principles that they want to employ, and you'll watch, they're going to give up the switch every time. So Jokic is going to be able to get a small on him whenever he wants. And then you start going to work. Well, if Jokic gets a small on him on the side of the court, the Lakers want to bring an extra defender and overload the side. And it's really interesting to see in a game where I thought he had a really good game, even supporting cast players like Luka forget that rule. And so he's like over on one side of the court, just staring at his man. And every coach on the bench is like, Luka, they might as well get a megaphone out. They're like, Luka, you got to come over and rotate. Then he comes over and rotates. So props to the bench for being on top of it. So they do look a little bit more in sync in terms of what they're trying to do as an overall unit, not just Marcus Smart, but certainly having a better defender out there and a more versatile defender like that and a veteran defender in a switch everything scheme, I think can help. And yeah, my concern is they're still going to get targeted by faster athletic teams so they can just dictate the mismatch. So it's exactly what we saw last year in Minnesota. But if you get a matchup like Denver, now all of a sudden it looks really, really different because that's not how Denver plays. So there is maybe something interesting going on there with the Lakers and this improved defense.
No, I definitely flagged the fact that they were just kind of flying around all over the place, especially against the Nuggets. And recently, I just feel like they have really active hands in the paint. Like Smart, of course, we talked about. LeBron has some generational hands, and they're all just getting dirty down in the paint, right? And the flying around bit to me is just the effort that we've been wanting to see. Like there's just so many possessions where you see like some lazy switches or guys not going out and trying to defend somebody on the corner. Like you said, you need a megaphone to get Lucas sometimes. But when he tries, like again, that's a long, big player that's able to get out there and defend some shots. And DeAndre Ayton, I'm not saying he's necessarily a plus defensively, but if you are going to switch everything, like he's a functional enough defender in that sort of system. And that's probably the best kind of defensive system for DeAndre Ayton to exist in. So I don't know, it's both kind of a necessity, and I guess it's at the end of the day just a necessity for them. But they do have some players they can make it kind of work, like you said, against some of these slower teams.
Does DeAndre Ayton have the worst hands in the league?
What's really interesting about that? No, the answer is Rudy Gobert.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
You think they're worse?
I think Rudy Gobert is the worst answer.
Wow.
Of players that play like starter minutes.
Well, I think Suns fans and Lakers fans have come to know that, but it's I feel bad for him because I actually think that's one of his big challenges, the way he plays and the style he plays. I just look at some of these possessions and I'm like, man, if you had good hands, it would just be money every time. And he struggles bobbling the ball in a lot of situations or holding on to the ball in a lot of situations. And that is something you just don't hear talked about a lot. You don't just that soft, sticky hand phenomenon. It used to be a bigger thing in the 90s when rebounding was a huge deal. And yes, anyway, keep going. You were saying?
Well, what's interesting about that is he's not good at catching the ball, but he actually has a really nice soft touch around the rim. Like when he actually has the ball, he has a really good, I think he can finish right up there with most any of these guys that'll catch around 8 feet. So he's got that, but he's at least got to catch the ball there to make it effective.
Interesting thing with the Lakers that, and it applies to the Nuggets too, I guess, as well, is that I've been looking at some of these numbers recently, and if you take their offensive rebounding and you just normalize it, so every team in the league has the same offensive rebounding, right? You don't actually look at offense with the second chance points. In other words, you just kind of look at the first chance offense.
Yep.
The Nuggets have the best first chance offense in the league by far.
That makes sense.
They have a 122 offensive rating when you do this. Guess who the second best offense in the league is?
I have a feeling you're going to tell me it's the Lakers.
It's the Lakers. It's the Lakers. So, that is not to say that the offensive rebounding doesn't count, because as we've talked about this season, it does. I think it counts quite a bit. But, if you're in a playoff series and you have the right matchup and you have all these skilled players and these numbers are without Austin Reeves for half the year or whatever, they've been very good since Austin Reeves has come back. Maybe there's something there where a style makes the fight and you get the right matchup. I also think Houston would be a really interesting matchup for them. I'm not sure I'd be excited to pick Houston in that series. And Reeves has been back since the All-Star break. They played 14 games since the All-Star break. They're now 10-4 in those 14 games. They're +8 in those games, and their defense is like 112-ish or something. So again, just where it needs to be, just a little bit better than average.
So overall, Reeves is still a negative defensively in my mind, but you can still see some of these players really showing out in specific moments. Like I think Tim Legler called this out in the Nuggets game. By the way, Tim Legler, just great. I love listening to Tim Legler talk about basketball. But the Nuggets were really trying to get the ball to Jokic at the nail. And, the Lakers doing their switch everything thing, and Reeves was ending up on him. He was doing a really good job of fighting for that position, right? He was not making it easy for them to just get it to Jokic in that position. So props to him for knowing that he's got this absolute mammoth out there and still doing his best to fight against it. Let me ask you a question that you asked me earlier, but for somebody else. Maybe this is going to come out of nowhere for some people, but I don't think that's the case. Can you name 10 players who are better offensively than Austin Reeves right now in the NBA?
This is what I feel like we did when we did our 3-part series on the best offensive players, right? And I feel like the reason I brought up Kawhi is because there's been some lag in processing where Kawhi was in that conversation in 2026 and where he is now. Reeves was like one of the big winners of that conversation for me for this exact reason. And so I don't know if I could name 10 players that are theoretically or possibly better than Reeves, but what I do know is that I can easily make an argument that Reeves is a top 10 offensive player. He's really fantastic. And he's actually gone up. When I do my valuations at the end of the year for our Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball, and I say, like, look, this guy's worth like 3 points on offense and, half a point on defense or whatever. Reeves gets 1+ point. He gets a full point added for the Jerry West, Gail Goodrich wristband that he's been wearing lately. The tape around the wristband. I watch him. I'm just like, he's not going to miss. He's wearing that wristband. He might be Jerry West. It's unbelievable. So, yeah, he's really good.
And really good in the sense that he's scoring in a bunch of different ways. Like he kind of has the thing where he'll get into the zone of getting downhill and guys just can't stay in front of him. Like he's just blowing by guys. And when you're playing next to somebody like Luka and LeBron coming back here, like there's so much attention that there's swing, he catches, knockdown shooter. But if he gets a step, he's got the footwork, he's got the athleticism, he's got the touch, right? He's just really dangerous in that kind of scenario. And then they go to the bench, you can run a bunch of pick and roll, you can run some isolation through him, right? So yeah, he's really just got the full package, and I think it's cool playing next to somebody like Luka, who he plays his particular style, and he's about as good as you can get at being just like a pick and roll maestro. But then you have somebody like Reeves that's like, all right, I can do all these other things. So it's a cool juxtaposition of their offensive flow that hasn't looked the prettiest throughout the entire season, but you can't deny over these last 14 games or so that Reeves and the Lakers in general, they've looked a lot better offensively, and he is a huge part of that.
Patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. It's the best way to support us. It's also where you can find our extra content and whatnot. Now, Cody, you mentioned something last week. I don't know if we want to talk about this now. And you mentioned last week that the San Antonio Spurs were maybe your favorite team to watch ever right now. I was kind of wondering what your other all-time favorite teams to watch are.
Wait, okay, so this is a post show, right? But
I'm cheating. I'm trying to sneak in the rest of our basketball talk before we do a proper non-basketball post show. Yeah,
I see what you're doing here.
That's why I should. I'm out of line. I'm sorry. I retract my question.
Oh, we could do this really quickly. Like maybe we talk about them, and then at another point we can deep dive some of our favorite teams. So maybe a rapid fire. Who are some of your favorite teams? I guess I literally just asked you. Oh, somebody in the comments knows. Somebody knows ball in there, Ben. Literally, I was going to say one of my sneaky picks is the early 90s Blazers. Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter. Oh, my God.
Yeah. Well, if we're doing
Rick Adelman. Oh, my God. That team rocks.
If we're doing rapid fire, I guess I'll just do like high-end teams, because I always have this thing where every year or every other year there's some sort of mid-level team mid-level team that are like the 2019 Nets were really, really fun. Last year's Portland Trailblazers were really, really fun. I have to go back through history and kind of remember, like, who is the team that you were really hooked on, who you knew wasn't going to be in the conference finals, but just was a fun, young, upcoming team. There's a lot of those, but then amongst the high-end teams for me, absolutely early 90s Blazers. Second three-peat Bulls was just like crack on the television. That was amazing. Trying to like what 21st century teams. I don't know. Those are the first two that immediately come to mind for me.
This is really interesting. I actually aesthetically I prefer the first three-peat Bulls more than watching the second three-peat Bulls.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm a big fan of them.
Just for me, there was no league pass in the first three-peat Bulls. So yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah.
Early 2000s Kings. That's a great shout out from the comments. Another early 90s. I really liked the early 90s Cavs teams, right? With Mark Price is on them. Brad Daugherty is on them. Some good, talented passing big men. You got some really advanced off-ball movement stuff with Mark Price. That was a pretty fun, fast-paced team. People can call me a liar all they want.
You're a liar.
I love pulling up the 2004 Pistons. I just do.
Yeah.
Like, there's just something so destructive and awesome and stalwart about it that I need it once in a while.
Okay. Well,
injected.
I think what's interesting, I know we said we're going to do rapid fire, but as we're going through this, I'm just realizing that there's a difference between what I was into at the time and then what I've been able to get into going back.
Okay.
So, people in the audience are saying like the 2014 Spurs. I didn't get into, like, at a certain point in the season, I started to get
you.
into it, right? At a certain point in the season, but it was really only at the end of the year, and then sitting with it and then going like, this is, what are we watching? This is absolutely unbelievable. It wasn't like at the beginning of the year, I was like, oh, you guys got to see, I watched 70 games of the 2014 Spurs, and they're just one of many examples. The 2004 Pistons, I didn't even really like watching the 2004 Pistons in 2004. But now when I go back, I'm like, oh, yeah, Cody, I've been watching the 2004 Pistons all week. I can't turn them off. The Bad Boys Pistons from the late 80s are another team like that, where in real time I kind of liked them. But going back with the old film and, you know, watching the tape now, I'm like, I can get hooked on the Bad Boys Pistons. So championship teams, or going back and looking at some of these great teams, you know, you mentioned the early 2000s Kings, teams like that, the 7 Seconds or Less Suns. You know, that's a team that in real time I didn't really have the same appreciation for. So it is a question that when you go back and watch a lot of old games has like a 2-part sort of identity to it, because on one hand you go, well, what did I watch and love at the time? Like last year's Pacers team to me was one of my favorite teams of all time to watch. They're incredible. But then you have these other teams, but you go back over the summer when we're doing historical work, and, you know, Cody calls me up and he's like, what have you been doing? And I'm like, I watched 37 straight 1989 Pistons games for some reason. So yeah, there's that.
You can't not say the 80s Lakers and Celtics. Like, those are just kind of given as well. They're very exciting teams.
I think we have to take the button man's question from the audience here. Who are your least favorite championship level teams to watch? That is a really interesting question.
Okay, first, this is a bias thing. Huge LeBron stan here. 2009 Cavs, some of the most fun I've had watching a team.
Oh, I thought you were going to say some of the least fun, because that offense in the playoffs got grimy.
There was something about seeing that LeBron every night, which was kind of special. Here's my take as somebody that's watched a lot of historical ball along with you with a bunch of projects. I would be okay not watching another 70s NBA game again. So,
ouch.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know. Like, some of the Kareem stuff is great, but
77 Blazers are actually, the limited number of games we have on the 77 Blazers, I think, are fantastic, with Bob Gross, who is the Manu Ginobili of his time. I mean, this is blasphemy right now, Cody. Now, if you go to, like, all right, I put on the 1976 finals between the Celtics and the Suns, which has this classic Game 5. I can understand both the aesthetic and the strategic level of that game not living up to your standards, but, you know, I don't know. I don't quite feel that way about the 1970s. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what it is. I think, like, aesthetically and strategically, it just feels so much different than what we see now. I'm trying to talk and Google something really quick.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you need to stall for a second, I mean, the 94 Knicks are not an easy watch. The thing is, like, I love Anthony Mason, and John Starks is kind of fun, but the 94 Knicks, that's a tough watch.
Prior to joining Thinking Basketball, I was trying to do some deep dive and stuff, and I got into trying to scout some Wes Unseld in the 70s. And I can't say that, like, the 70s Bullets were the most enthralling watch at the time either.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder if the spirit of this question was like, pick any era of any team in NBA history. All right. We need to cleanse all this basketball talk with something from outside of the world of basketball. Do you have anything that you would like to bring up this week? Have you done any homework this week? Stuff like that.
Well, do you asked me a question, and I didn't know if that was something that you wanted to actually talk about today.
What did I ask you?
So, you asked me about villains, Ben.
Oh my God, I did. Yeah, because we're talking about Thanos, right?
Yep. So you texted me out of the blue, and you're like, hey, maybe at some point we should actually just talk about who our favorite villains are of all time. And I gotta say, I thought it was going to be a much easier question, and my takeaway after really thinking about it is, I'm like, this would be a 3-hour pod, so I really have to rein myself in. So I'm going to let you jump forward on this one first.
Your conversation about Thanos had me thinking about the elements of a villain and the different types of villains. And I think to your point, when you start thinking about it, it gets really, really rich. I like villains that are complex, that represent really compelling moral dilemmas, or they can even elicit empathy, because their personality or their backstory has shades of gray and color to it. I think that's really interesting. But I also like villains that embody certain themes. So if you think about, like, the shark in Jaws, or the Terminator in the film The Terminator. You know, there's this inevitability. That's why I think Anton Chigurh is such a great villain. There's this embodiment of like inevitability or doom, or I just remember watching Terminator and the never-ending sense of like doom and inescapability of the world. You know, like the world that's set up in that movie, no matter where you go, you're in trouble. How do you get away? There's no place to hide. It almost kind of makes you feel like you're drowning. Right. And so that to me is a very, very powerful, successful villain. But then you also have villains that have these like really, really rich visual tapestries that make them so memorable. Darth Vader is probably one of the most incredible examples there, with the red on black and the cape and the helmet and the, you know, the everything. So it was not a simple thing. And I think, yeah, you're right. If we really wanted to do it justice, it's like for the two of us, it's probably a 6-part, 6-hour series.
So I'm going to try and narrow this a little bit, because you hit on a couple of really important things here. You kind of have to have these categories where you have the force of nature or like monster kind of thing. And you can throw like Predator in there, Alien goes in there, right? You have all of those, the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, stuff like that, right? You also have like super villains, which I think Darth Vader actually falls into that. Anything with like Lord of the Rings falls into that. But then in that category, you get like Magneto, you get the Joker and stuff like that.
Yep.
But I think what I'm most interested in are the quote unquote villains that aren't like, I'm a cape wearing like James Bond supervillain mustache twirler. It's just kind of like the quote unquote regular everyday people that have like a moral compass that bends them towards villainy, and they express it in a bunch of these different ways. So I guess even Agent Smith to me falls under the like superhero or supervillain sort of thing. So outside of the scope of those kinds of things, do you have any individuals that stand out to you as some of your favorite villains?
I think if we'll do a rapid fire here again. I think if we were to do this, we would have to do spoilers and things like that. So I'm just going to try to say the movie instead of the character. But I think the villain in Chinatown would be a great example of a sort of what you might call like a man behind the curtain. Like, you know, there's moving parts in the background of the story that the villain isn't necessarily on screen for. I think that's a really powerful type of villain. That was one that I thought up. But then you also have, you mentioned him, I think Magneto is just conceptually a great villain. You also get like over the top villains, where you know, someone like the villain in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, you know, just like these highly performative villains. I think those are another thing for me is like, what's really memorable? What really sticks with you about the villain, about the antagonist, about these ideas? So yeah, do you have any?
So we really can't, like, how do we do it? We're not a movie podcast. What do we do about spoilers? What do we do? I think you got to start.
Well, I think you got to say the movie, and then if we need a spoiler, we will put a timestamp in for people. We'll tell them when to come back.
All right, let me. Okay, if you haven't seen the movie, Gone Girl, you should just stop right now.
So there you go, the villain in Gone Girl. There you go.
Yeah. Am I not allowed to talk about this villain at all in any detail?
No, see, that's not rapid fire.
So the villain in the movie Gone Girl is probably my favorite villain of all time. I think about this character quite a lot. That's probably my favorite movie of all time. I want to put my cards on the table. There's something about the way that we see the development of this character, and then the situations that almost make you be like, oh my goodness, this character is in immense danger. And then stuff happens beyond that. Really blows my mind. So that character is awesome. Can I give you a couple literary villains, some book villains that I thought about?
Absolutely, because now I'll have no idea who you're talking about. This will be great.
So again, they're probably not that much of spoilers, but a couple of these characters, you know, you'll learn pretty quickly that they're villains. The judge in Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian is sort of just like this pure embodiment of evil that looks over the top. I think he would fall into this over the top thing.
There you go. Yeah.
That is just like anytime he appears, like the most diabolical stuff is just about to go down, right? And the other one, I'm actually halfway through this book, so I can't even spoil it for myself, but John Steinbeck's East of Eden, which is coming to Netflix soon, so I'm excited to see people see this, but the character Kathy Ames in there is kind of this like Anton Chigurh kind of sociopathic character that you actually get to be inside of the mind in. And it's cool to see like the interiority of a sociopath and that the way they're just going about doing their thing. So I think those are the kinds of characters I'm really drawn to in this case.
Yeah. Nurse Ratched, Kathy Bates.
Yeah.
Terminator 2, another really visual one. Everyone remembers where they were the first time they saw Terminator 2.
Yeah. I think I like the T-1000 more as a villain than I just like the T-800 with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. Some other great comments from the audience here. Michael Corleone. This is why this is such a rich conversation or even just like topic to broach from a storytelling standpoint, because at what point do you blur the lines between an anti-hero and a villain? I had some other people that I thought, you mentioned Odysseus, and I had some other people that I thought, what if we follow the main character, but the main character does kind of some horrible things, and that's how the story ends, and that's sort of what we're left with? Is that a villain? Can the main character of the story be a villain? I don't know, but it's really interesting stuff. Do you have any other before we call it a wraps for the day? So hold on, I have one more. Thank you to someone in the audience who shouted this out. Literary villain for me, Iago from Othello.
Oh,
absolutely loved Iago. Yes.
I have a blind spot for Shakespeare.
Okay. Well, I don't think I'm going to give any spoilers away when I say Iago is a twisted man.
Okay. I might have to check it out.
He's a twisted manipulator.
Believe it or not, I have coworkers that are very much into Shakespeare, so I need to get into that. One person, Hans Landa, I believe.
Yes, Hans Landa, not to be confused with Hans Gruber.
Yes.
Which Hans do you like? Yes, which Hans do you prefer?
I really like Hans Landa's performance, but I think it's like a pure just action villain. Hans Gruber is about as just straightforward as you can get in Die Hard.
Yeah. The Xenomorph and Alien is another fun one.
Let me throw it out to you, because I said Jurassic Park a little bit earlier. I think I said this to you. You may have said it's a spoiler. I don't think it's a spoiler.
It's a spoiler.
But I think just the way that John Hammond is, in the way that he opens the park and he wants everyone to enjoy the park, and it's very like I think the way they handle like this billionaire that's super rich that is kind of doing the move fast and break things thing, but it doesn't seem like he actually has an evil bone in his body. I think it's handled a lot more subtly than when people are trying to do satire about billionaires right now, and it's almost too close to what we're seeing nowadays. So I really like John Hammond as somebody that's clearly not a villainous character, but is, in the context of the movie, it has some outcomes, like a utilitarian evil person because of the things that he ends up creating.
Yeah, that's a great call. How do I end this show? Do we what do I do? Do I say thanks for listening? Do we we have more? How does it happen? Did you do a Drew Holiday shout out or hour or something?
Somebody said I am wearing my Drew Holiday shirt that you actually gifted me this.
I was going to say that's a great shirt.
Yeah. You just said you're going to be getting something in the mail, and Ben doesn't just send me things randomly, but he randomly sent me this Drew Holiday shirt. So tremendous stuff right there.
I mean, if you, dear listener, if you saw a Drew Holiday shirt, would you think of Cody Hodak or would you think of Drew Holiday? I think we all know the answer to that. Thanks as always for listening all the way through on this one. Appreciate all your kind comments lately and your support. Hope you're enjoying this NBA season as it winds down and we ramp up for the playoffs. And of course, as always, we hope you're having a great day.